by the skin?
So there is much less data. Most of the data that is out there relates to the ones clipped to your ear, but the studies are very varied. They use different devices, different settings, different stimulation parameters. They're done usually in very small groups of patients. Most of the studies are not controlled or randomized. So there was only one controlled study like that, randomized controlled study like that, and that compared just 11 patients with active stimulation with 11 patients with sham. So they had the device clipped on, but it wasn't active. All of the people who had the active stimulation guessed they had active stimulation, and lo and behold, there was a benefit of the active stimulation. But it's a tiny study.
What do you think, Karen, listening to that?
These are expensive, and given that there is such little research, the advertising does seem quite grandiose, I would say. I think from my own perspective, in terms of the way it's impacted me, I would say I probably have noticed a difference, although it is subtle, but that may well be the fact that I'm just putting something on my ear and saying that this is the 60 minutes where I'm stopping, thinking about other things or the stress of the day or anything like that, which I probably wouldn't do if I wasn't putting this thing on my ear. Yeah. But do I really need to have spent nearly £600 to get that effect?
I think that's a very interesting point that Karen's just made there, which makes it very difficult also to study the effectiveness of these devices. If you just spend half an hour just relaxing each day, you may well get a lot of the benefits that are actually claimed from these devices. Indeed, if you do that, you may well be boosting your parasympathetic system in some ways because you are relaxing. You are turning down your sympathetic system.
That links us nicely, actually, into other long-term conditions that were mentioned by listeners. Hamish, what are your thoughts about fatigue?
I think it's a really interesting one. There is evidence that VNS improves quality of life in patients with depression, with the implanted VNS device. And that improvement in quality of life is over and above any improvement in mood. And it could be that underlying that improvement in quality of life is an improvement in fatigue, because we know that fatigue in patients with depression is one of the biggest drivers of poor quality of life. And we see that improvement in quality of life over and above treatment of the underlying condition in patients with epilepsy, rheumatoid arthritis, heart failure, irritable bowel syndrome, or inflammatory bowel syndrome. So all of those conditions, there is some evidence of improvement in quality of life with VNS that may relate to an improvement in fatigue. We don't know.
Let's just tackle the final kind of set of conditions. These are gut conditions like IBS and even weight loss. What thoughts do we have on this? Hamish, do you think there's any experience in the potential of VNS on any of these conditions?
Again, there is some evidence for implanted VNS in Crohn's disease and inflammatory bowel disease. The idea of using VNS to treat some of these conditions, I think theoretically is sound. So we have the potential of being able to influence the gut. Many of these conditions involve inflammation, and we have evidence that stimulating the vagus nerve actually can dampen down inflammation. But I'm not aware of good evidence in large samples of patients who are randomized to either the device or the sham that have actually shown the benefits that are often claimed.
I'm going to welcome Phil, our science researcher, into this conversation because he has also been diving into the studies, as he often does for us on this show. And I want to go through these devices one by one, Phil, and actually have a look at what they have listed, because Neurosim, they have a page on their website where they list what they call the results from scientific studies, and it does sound impressive. They say a 45% improvement in what they call depressive score, a 61% improvement in post-viral symptoms, a 78% improvement in inflammation. They say that their device is validated by the world's most elite research institutions in randomized placebo-controlled scientific studies. Over to you, Phil. What did you find?
There have actually, it turns out, been loads of good quality studies into Neurosim, so it's a really well... I will say that I think their claims online might go a little bit far. I want to start with the ones about mental symptoms. So they talk about fatigue, depression, anxiety, attention, and actually sleep as well. These claims all come from some small studies on people specifically with long COVID, In these, they didn't try to rule out the placebo effect, so they might just have been measuring the mental benefits of getting a high-tech seeming treatment when you're already feeling really bad.
Yeah.
Even if there are these benefits for long COVID sufferers, we can't necessarily apply them to people without long COVID.
Yeah, well, I would agree that there is a real caveat. Even if it is improving symptoms of depression in people with long COVID, that doesn't mean to say that it will treat depression in the context of a depressive illness. I think the NeuroSim device is the best researched of the devices out there on the market. And at the very least, it does demonstrate that it can impact the nerve function, it can impact on inflammation, and that it can influence brain function as well. So we do actually see changes in activity within the brain. Now, translating that into a clinical improvement for patients is a different matter, and that is where the evidence, I think, is really lacking.
Thanks, Hamish. Phil, what else did you find?
So the next claims I looked at were, quote unquote, reduced oxidative stress, improved circulation, reduced blood pressure, that kind of thing. Again, these are all real results that they found in studies, but they're specific to people with heart issues or blood pressure conditions. Although for those people, I think that is promising.
Hamish, why might vagus nerve stimulation be helpful if you've got heart or blood pressure issues?
Because of the role of the parasympathetic nervous system in controlling the activity of the heart rate, blood pressure, and what we refer to as heart rate variability. What we know is that higher heart rate variability is a sign of good health. And we know that if we boost the parasympathetic system, we see an increase in heart rate variability. It's one of the major ways that we actually see whether any of these devices is actually impacting on the vagus nerve.
Okay, Phil, so pulling this all together, what were your thoughts in the end to all the scientific studies that NeuroSim quoted?
Well, after looking through their research, I ended up with 3 claims in particular that I thought were fully backed up by the studies as the claims were written. They are: NeuroSim gives 61% improvement in vagus nerve activity.
Okay.
45% improvement in postural heart rate change. If your heart starts pounding normally when you get up, good news for you, that might go down. And the third is a 32% improvement in memory. And this was actually a really interesting and thorough study and a great result, in my opinion.
You could imagine that stimulating the vagus nerve may have impacts on cognition. If it improves mood, it may well improve cognition if somebody's depressed. If you reduce fatigue, you will also improve cognition. It's a plausible finding.
So that's NeuroSim. Let's move on to the next device. This is a device that you wear around your neck, Pulsetto.
Yeah, I took a look at their site too. And so compared to the 15 or so studies that NeuroSim cited, Pulsetto had 4. 2 of them were prospective or pilot studies, so very initial, early stage things. One was someone's master's thesis showing that Pulsetto affects your heart rate. One was a study of football players, finding that Pulsetto had no effect on performance or recovery, although they did say that they found that playing football induced significant levels of fatigue.
Yes, that makes sense. Yes.
So
if
probably
you're playing hard enough.
probably more results and research needed on that one.
Yes. Finally then, GammaCore. So this is the handheld wireless device that you push against your vagus nerve in your neck. GammaCore is actually available on the NHS for people suffering from cluster headaches. And NICE, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, who produce the medical guidelines, say, quote, clinical evidence shows that for some people, using GammaCore as well as standard care reduces the frequency and intensity of cluster headache attacks and reduces the need for medication. Hamish, why is it only GammaCore that is available on the NHS?
There's at least one good-sized study of GammaCore in patients with cluster headaches. This included over 200 patients where there was evidence of benefit. So it's one of the largest studies of the transcutaneous VNS devices. And there were other studies that supported it, which then led to NICE making their recommendation that it could be included as a treatment.
I'd like to chuck one more device into the mix, if I can. A few listeners mentioned this in their emails. It's called Sensate. It is an egg-shaped device on a lanyard that you hang around your neck and it sits on your chest. Have you seen this, Karen?
No.
It looks to cost £299 or £349 if you want to include a year's subscription to their Sensate Plus app. This one works a little bit differently. They say that it emits infrasonic waves through the body via bone conduction, and that when you're using it, your chest resonates, sending out a frequency that signals the vagus nerve to relax. It's sound-based rather than electrical-based.
Certainly the claims are very different. I would even question whether it is actually stimulating the vagus nerve. The company talk about it toning the nerve rather than stimulating it. I'm not quite sure what they actually mean by that. And I was unable to find any good evidence that it actually influenced autonomic nervous system function. Clearly, if you put this device around your neck for 30 to 60 minutes and you chill out, you will feel more relaxed. And you will see some changes, but that's just because your body is sitting there in a relaxed way.
They say it will calm your anxiety in just 10 minutes, and that over time, the device can improve your digestion, your heart health, and breathing. They quote a pilot study in their marketing that they say shows the device provides 60 extra minutes of sleep per night and a 48% decrease in stress levels in the first 28 days. Phil, you have looked at that pilot study.
It looks like they commissioned a study from a place called BioSelf Labs, and they got together 25 people who, I quote, had never used Sensate but had expressed interest in trying it. I think the crucial thing then is that all those people were using Sensate every day, and then they were questioned afterwards. So they did report these results of better sleep and less stress, but it's not compared against the placebo effect. So like before, this might well be
The placebo effect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I also think there's a general point here about this idea of doing a pilot study. The aim of that is really to do an experiment to find out whether it's worth then doing a real study afterwards. And it's in that real study where you can then test whether something actually works.
Against placebo, yeah.
I completely agree with Phil. I think the whole literature of the transcutaneous VNS devices is littered with all of these pilot studies that are not compared to anything apart from just giving a group of people the treatment.
It's time for the final question, which is, are vagus nerve stimulators, and we're talking here about the transcutaneous ones, not the ones that are implanted, are they the best things since sliced bread? Are they SB or are they marketing BS?
I think there is some tantalising evidence that is worthy of being studied further, and they could end up being a useful additional treatment for many people. But at this moment in time, we can't say that, in my opinion.
Karen, is this promise of potential enough for you to keep using it?
I think I will keep using it to see if it really does have any effect over time. But also, as I mentioned before, it's a good cue for me when I put it on to zone out and chill out and say, this is my time to relax, which I probably otherwise wouldn't do.
And if you hadn't bought one, would you now opt to spend £600 on one?
No. I think my kids would say that I'm a bit of a sucker for a gadget.
Well, with that, I shall wrap up today's Sliced Bread. A big thank you to Karen, Hamish and Fi for joining me. And if you are listening to this and you are thinking, Greg, I have a wonder product I would really like you to investigate, do send it over, either on email to sliced.bread@bbc.co.uk or as a message or a voice note on WhatsApp to 07543 306 807. Next time, menopause supplements. They claim to help with some of the symptoms of menopause and of perimenopause and postmenopause, but can these pills and powders containing the likes of red clover, kelp and slippery elm bark really help literally half the population? I'll be finding out. See ya.
Sliced Bread was presented by Greg Foot and produced by Simon Hoban. The World of Ones in a few moments. First, the weather forecast with Elizabeth Rizzini.
Thank you, Tom. Well, there are no big changes in the forecast as we head through the rest of this week and indeed potentially for much of next as well. It's still dry, it's settled, there's sunshine for many again, although it's in shorter supply, admittedly, further east today. Could all last until potentially next Friday and the bank holiday weekend. But as always, do keep an eye on the forecast. So high pressure is still to the north of the UK. There's a lot of cloud still for eastern areas of England in particular, and that cloud will continue to burn back towards the coast as we head through the rest of the afternoon. But it is taking its time to thin and break, and we've still got fairly brisk northeasterly winds blowing towards those North Sea facing coasts, so probably staying rather cloudy for coastal areas of northeast England, Yorkshire and Lincolnshire right until the end of the day. Some sunshine developing later, but perhaps not until the evening for parts of East Anglia and southeast England, so there will be some breaks there. Elsewhere, very sunny, certainly best in the west today, and is looking dry for all four nations, but a patchy cloud still for northeast Scotland up through the Murray of Firth perhaps. Temperature wise, 18 to 22 Celsius Celsius in the west, 16 to 20 further east, but this is quite sunshine dependent, and just 12 to 14 degrees for North Sea facing coasts. Now, overnight tonight, there will be some cloud pushing westwards into the Midlands, otherwise clear skies, it's dry. Temperatures below freezing again in northern Scotland. Patchy frost too possible for northern England, Cumbria, the borders perhaps. And then tomorrow, well, it's dry and it's settled again. A lot less cloud for eastern England. So for the vast majority of us, plenty of sunshine. It stays dry. It will turn cloudier later for coastal areas of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire and East Anglia, possibly for southeast England too. We've still got that onshore breeze, so it's cooler here, but warmer for most of us tomorrow than it is today. 18 to 22 Celsius, 24 degrees again for western Scotland. Tom.
Thanks very much, Elizabeth.
Hello, it's Lucy Worsley here, and we're back with a brand new series of Lady Swindlers.
Here we are in cell number 1. I'm just shutting us in, Ross. Wow.
Following in the footsteps of some all-new criminals.
Can you take me down to the other end of Baker Street, please?
Certainly, jump in.
Thank you.
Join me and my all-female team of detectives as we revisit the audacious crimes of women trying to make it in a world made for men.
This is a story of working class women trying to get by. This is survival.
Lady Swindlers Season 2 with Lucy Worsley from BBC Radio 4. Listen now on BBC Sounds.
This is Radio 4 on 92 to 95 FM, on BBC Sounds and on your smart speaker.
Hello and welcome to The World at One with me, Sarah Montague. The economy's doing better than expected.
We grew in services, we grew in manufacturing, and we are set to be the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first 3 months of this year.
Is this a one-off, or could it hint at better times to come? Russian and Ukrainian delegations are in Turkey, but President Putin is not. We'll hear about the talks and have a report from the Ukrainian front line.
This week, there's been a glimmer of hope that it might be the beginning of the end of the war. But on the front line, it's quite clear how much it will take for the fighting to stop.
And ahead of the UK's major summit with the EU, Evan Davis and I tried to establish if Brexit is paying off.
There are dividends and there are freedoms that come with Brexit. There are undoubtedly costs in terms of frictions.
We figure out the balance sheet of Brexit. The BBC News is read by Chris Aldridge.
The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has said the UK economy is beginning to turn a corner after it grew by more than expected in the first 3 months of the year. She described the 0.7% increase as very encouraging, but analysts have warned growth is likely to slow throughout the rest of the year. Here's our business correspondent, Mark Ashdown.
After flatlining throughout the second half of 2024, the economy has surged into life, with services driving better than expected growth over the first quarter of this year. The sector accounts for around 80% of economic output and saw broad gains across retail and wholesale. Computer programming, car leasing and advertising also had a strong quarter. Production, which includes mining, agriculture and manufacturing, recorded significant growth, while there were falls in education, telecoms and legal services. There was a big jump in exports, which economists say is the result of businesses front-loading spending in order to get ahead of Donald Trump's tariffs. That, coupled with increasingly fragile consumer confidence surveys, has led to widespread predictions of an economic slowdown throughout the course of the year. Nevertheless, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, said the economy was beginning to turn a corner and was now outperforming most of the G7. The Conservatives said Labour's tax policies were hitting households and businesses and were putting growth at risk.
Sir Keir Starmer says the UK is starting talks with other countries to set up overseas return hubs for failed asylum seekers. The Prime Minister revealed the plan on his first official visit to Albania, where he also announced a strategic partnership with the country on defence and illegal migration. Our chief political correspondent Henry Zeffman reports on what the planned return hubs might look like.
Somewhat unusually, the Prime Minister announced this in Albania, but Albania's Prime Minister then instantly clarified that his country would not be involved. It's not yet clear which countries might be. That slight awkwardness aside, this is a significant development in this government's approach to migration. The talks might be at a very early stage, but Keir Starmer going public with his desire to send failed asylum seekers to another country shows how concerned they are at the top of government about this issue. And it may not just be asylum seekers. One government source said that return hubs could also be used for foreign national offenders the UK wants to deport. This scheme would differ from the scrapped Rwanda scheme, where asylum claims would have been considered in that country. More than 12,000 people have crossed the Channel so far in 2025, a record number at this stage of the year.
Ukraine's President Zelensky has accused Russia of sending stand-in props to peace talks in Turkey after Moscow confirmed Vladimir Putin would not be going. In response, the Russian Foreign Ministry called Mr. Zelensky a clown and a loser. Our senior international correspondent Orla Guerin sent this report from Istanbul.
The peace talks due to be held here were not expected to produce any major breakthroughs. Now, before they even begin, the mood is getting more sour as Russia heaps insults on the Ukrainian leader. Despite having called for these talks himself, President Putin seems set to stay away, in sharp contrast to President Zelensky, who said he was ready for a face-to-face meeting. The Ukrainian leader is already in the Turkish capital, Ankara, seeing President Erdogan. If talks between Russia and Ukraine at any level go ahead today or tomorrow, that may be the only achievement to speak of.
A former head of the Special Forces, General Seguin Jenkins, has been put in charge of the Royal Navy. He's the first Royal Marine to be appointed First Sea Lord. The Defence Secretary John Healey described him as a proven leader with a distinguished career. The BBC's Panorama programme has previously reported that Seguin had been accused of covering up allegations of SAS war crimes in Afghanistan, which are now the subject of a public inquiry. The Ministry of Defence denied those claims. The wife of a Conservative councillor who was jailed for her social media posts about migrants on the day of the Southport attack has started an appeal against the length of her sentence. Lucy Connolly was given a 31-month prison term after writing on X that hotels housing asylum seekers should be set on fire. Graham Satchell reports.
Lucy Connolly's case has become a lightning rod for those who believe there is a so-called two-tier justice system in the UK. Her husband, a Conservative town councillor, the former Prime Minister Liz Truss and the former Home Secretary Suella Braverman have all called her sentence excessive. Connolly pleaded guilty to stirring racial hatred after a post on social media called for attacks on migrants after the Southport attack last year. In court this morning, her lawyers asked her via video link from prison if she had intended anyone to set fire to asylum hotels. Absolutely not, she replied. I didn't mean what I said and I apologise. The court has heard Connolly was being prescribed medication for anxiety and had never been in trouble with the police before. The hearing continues.
A man and a woman have been arrested in South Korea after they were accused of trying to blackmail the Tottenham Hotspur captain Son Heung-min. The pair alleged to have claimed the woman was pregnant with the footballer's child. Our Seoul correspondent Jean Mackenzie has more.
The woman is alleged to have approached Son last year, claiming she was carrying his child. She reportedly demanded hundreds of thousands of pounds to stay silent. The man then allegedly followed up with him in March, trying again to get money. The footballer's representatives filed a complaint to the police last week, accusing the pair of blackmail. Son Heung-min is not only South Korea's most famous footballer, he's somewhat of a national hero, and he's managed to keep his image clean and his public life relatively private. In a statement, his agency said he was unequivocally the victim in this case.
Jean Mackenzie in Seoul.
Chris, thanks very much. Some good news on the economy today. It grew faster than expected in the first 3 months of the year, expanding by 0.7%. It's good news also for a government that was elected saying its number one priority is growth. Here's the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves.
The numbers today are very encouraging. We grew in services, we grew in manufacturing, and we are set to be the fastest growing economy in the G7 in the first 3 months of this year. That reflects some of the decisions that we have made, the choices that we have made. We brought stability back to the economy, which has enabled the Bank of England to cut interest rates 4 times, increasing the national living wage to give millions of working people a pay rise. And of course, just last week we secured 2 significant trade deals with the US and India.
Well, it's worth saying that the figures cover the period before US tariffs came in and before the rise in national insurance contributions. And some analysts have warned the strong rate of growth is unlikely to continue. Now, Rachel Reeves mentioned growth in both services and in manufacturing. So are businesses in both sectors feeling as positive? Catherine Shuttleworth is CEO of the retail marketing agency Get Savvy, and they employ about 65 people. They're based in Leeds and London.
These figures this morning don't really sort of match what I'm seeing on the ground so much in my own business. We've had an okay first quarter, but it's certainly been one where we've been cautious in making any big decisions. I think the concern that I've got, and lots of other business owners I talk to have in my sector, is that big organisations that buy our services, they're very cautious. And so people are putting off investment decisions and spending money. When we started to do our budget planning last year, we planned to give all of our people a pay increase. We'd baked that into our numbers. What we hadn't baked in was the national insurance increase, and that was a bit of a body blow, to be honest. We've had to obviously pay all of that, but that was our war chest for investing in different things. So that means that we've got less choices about doing new things, getting behind new ideas. And we'll probably be hiring less people on the back of it because we just haven't got as much money to move around.
Rachel Waring is Managing Director of Waring's Furniture, which is based in Norwich and supplies furniture mostly to hospitality companies. They employ around 70 people.
Very good news. Fantastic that it looks like production specifically grew by 1.1%, which is brilliant for a nation that we're constantly told doesn't make anything. Clearly we do make lots, and all of us manufacturers are delighted to prove our worth. It looks like Q1 matches what we have found in our company, which showed growth in January, February and March. And we're also seeing the same growth in April and May and June. So from our perspective, we're going to also show some fantastic growth in the next quarter as well. I think that by the interest rates looking like they were going to come down, people have then said, right, let's do that refurbishment. Let's invest in the capital of our business. And that is what I believe we are benefiting from now. So I can report from our company that we are having a good financial year.
Rachel Waring with a very upbeat assessment, contrast to Catherine Shuttleworth's. So which portrayal's more accurate? How should we read the figures? Howard Davies is chairman of Inigo Insurance. He's the former deputy governor of the Bank of England, former chairman of NatWest. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How do you read these figures? Are we all about to be hit by other things that suggest this is a one-off?
Well, I think it's important not to be too curmudgeonly when you get some decent figures. People are always looking for the bad news. And so I think we should welcome this. I mean, clearly the economy is not falling off a cliff, as some people sort of feared it might do. But if you look behind the headline, there are some things that are not so great. I mean, there is a net trade impact, in other words, exports over imports, which appears to reflect people trying to get their product out and perhaps building up stocks in the US before they've sold them. So that could be a factor. And also, although the Chancellor pointed to growth in services and manufacturing, the one area of the economy which has not grown at all is construction, which has been flat for 3 months. And that, for a government which is trying to increase house building, is not particularly good news. So there is light and shade here. And then the one other thing I would just add is that if the economy is stronger, it may well be that we don't get quite as many interest rate cuts as we were going to get, because the Bank of England will be very concerned about the balance of supply and demand, and if demand is a bit stronger, then inflationary pressures will equally be a little bit stronger.
Well, I mean, everybody gets excited when it's sort of stronger than expected. It's 0.7% rather than 0.6%.
Yeah.
Is it possible to quantify what that ultimately means?
No, I mean, you're right. But let's be clear. The 0.6% is just the average of forecasters' expectations. And so that's a bit like taking all the weather forecasters and saying, well, on average, they think it's going to rain about 3 o'clock. And probably you and I would then say, well, it isn't, because it almost never does. And so I don't think one should really compare the 0.6 with the 0.7, frankly. 0.7 is a pretty solid number and suggests that the economy is by no means in decline. Now, if you look at the forecasts for the year as a whole, the IMF, OECD and Bank of England all have annual forecasts beginning with a 1. And if you multiply, 4.7 by 4, you get nearly 3. And so we can expect that it's going to be lower in the remaining quarters of the year.
One of the things I'm wondering about is whether this more solid figure can then translate to judgments made by the Chancellor in her spending review, which is June the 11th.
Well, the bizarre way in which these decisions are made is that the Office of Budget Responsibility makes a forecast about what is going to be happening in 4 years' time. Is debt going to be falling as a percentage of GDP in 4 years' time? And that will be the crucial thing. Now, one of the factors influencing that decision is whether the economy is going to grow more or less. I would expect that this figure would not change their assessment of the likely growth of the economy in the next 3 or 4 years. So in that sense, I think the short answer to your question, is it going to affect spending decisions? In itself, this, no.
OK, so then I'm curious about some comments by Nick Williams, who's senior, he left Downing Street a month ago, former economic advisor. And he said that the Chancellor will have no choice but to raise taxes just because of the way the economy is looking. Do you agree with that?
Well, I don't think it's right to say no choice, because there are two sides to the budget balance. There's taxing and there's spending. So in theory, she could also reduce spending in order to bring the figures back into line. And what he's really saying is that the medium-term growth expectations have declined, irrespective of this particular number, and therefore that the amount of headroom that the Chancellor has got in year 4 is going to be reduced, and in order to bring that back into balance, that she's going to have to do something on taxes. Now, as I say, I think there are 3 options. 1 is taxes, 2 is spending, and 3rd is to revise the fiscal framework. I've got to say I'm a voter for number 3, because I think the fiscal framework that we've currently got is rather peculiar and is constraining the government's discretion in a very uncertain world on the basis of very dodgy figures, frankly, in 4 years' time, of expectations and forecasts, many of which will certainly turn out to be wrong. But I guess what he's saying is, well, if she can't cut expenditure and she won't revise the fiscal framework, then the only other answer is taxes. That's logically true.
Well, he makes the point about spending, not to mend the reason it's not credible is not to mend creaking local government, not to tackle rampant crime, not to meet modern demands for defence, certainly not to fill the fiscal hole from sharply cutting immigration. If you did revise the fiscal rules, surely you couldn't address all that as well?
No, my point about revising the fiscal framework is not really about the details of individual spending programmes. And he's assuming that cutting spending has all those terrible impacts. Well, I'm not absolutely certain about that. But my point is that you shouldn't be making decisions at the margin on investment programmes, which we know the government needs to do, on the basis of very uncertain forecasts 4 years ahead, particularly in an environment where the growth reductions and the forecasts that are driving this are based on people looking at what President Trump is doing on trade and looking at the possibility of a global trade war and saying, whoa, help, the economy is going to grow less quickly. Now, however important we think Rachel Reeves is, she can't do much about that.
No.
That's just a given. It's an exogenous factor, as economists would say. And I think it's a mistake to be making short-term decisions about public spending or taxing here on the basis of a change in the global environment, which may then turn out to turn around again.
Sir Howard Davies, thank you very much. Well, let's turn to another of the government's promises, that on immigration. Prime Minister says the UK is talking to other countries about them hosting return hubs for migrants who failed to secure asylum in the UK. He confirmed the plan on a trip to Albania, which will not be one of those host countries. Chris Mason is our political editor, joins us from Westminster. And Chris, can we start with what is a return hub? How do they work?
Yeah, so this is the government grappling to find something of a solution to the small boats crisis, as many see it. 12,000 people having crossed the Channel so far in 2025. It's not the same as what the previous government wanted to do, that Rwanda scheme, where people could have been sent there pretty much on arrival and the whole process of their claim being looked in from there. Instead, this idea is about sending people to third countries, to use the government language, in other words, not where they came from and not the UK, once their legal avenues have been exhausted here. Why would you do that? The argument made within government is that A, it could act as a deterrent, and B, it means that any change in their circumstances that might allow them to change the nature of their desire to stay here, to re-examine whether or not they had a claim for asylum, for instance, would be happening somewhere else or wouldn't be able to happen, such as starting a family, for instance. So that's the idea. What we don't know is which countries the UK hopes to set up these arrangements with and by when.
But we know that it's not going to be Albania because of a rather bizarre moment in the press conference.
Yeah. So Albania does have an arrangement with Italy along exactly these lines. And the Albanian Prime Minister said in front of Keir Starmer that that was a specific arrangement because they are close allies and geographically close. And lots of others had asked if they could be a similar arrangement that Italy has with Albania. And Albania had said no. Now, the government hadn't wildly talked up the prospect of securing this particular arrangement with Albania, but it is unfortunate in terms of how it looks that when the government is talking about just this, the very country it is visiting says no to that idea.
But the idea of saying it now is what? To roll the pitch, to get people ready for this?
Yeah, and as part of this grapple to try and find solutions that might work to reduce the number of small boat crossings. And there's an intense awareness in government that just as a symbol of demonstrable failure, not just this government, the previous one as well, the issue of small boats crossings is huge. And there's a real awareness in government that for plenty of people, the whole subject of immigration will often be one around illegal immigration. Yes, there's the announcement we had earlier in the week about trying to get those numbers of legal migration figures down, and they are principally, in numerical terms, the absolute vast bulk of the immigration numbers, but the illegal immigration, in particular small boats, something that ministers are well aware of, just sparks a huge amount of anger. And as I say, it's just that sort of demonstrable sense of a lack of government grip when you see those near daily pictures of dinghies in the Channel.
Chris Mason, thanks very much. Now then, do get in touch with us on social media. You can use the hashtag BBC Watto, W-A-T-O. Our email address is worldat1@bbc.co.uk. Now, there are delegations from Ukraine and Russia in Turkey. Not yet in the same city. But President Putin is not there, neither is President Trump. And when President Zelensky, who has arrived in Ankara, was told the names of the Russian delegates, he called them theatre props or stand-in props. A comment that prompted a Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman to call him a clown and a loser. Well, the hoped-for peace talks, the first in more than 3 years, are clearly not on track. Steve Rosenberg, our Russian editor, is in Istanbul. But Steve, are they still expected to go ahead in some form later?
Well, I mean, the talks haven't been cancelled. I can tell you that for sure. But I'm waiting outside a palace in Istanbul and with other journalists. We don't know what time these talks may start. We don't know. We don't know if they're going to happen at all. It's very uncertain. We have been told that the Russian delegation is in Istanbul. We haven't seen them, but we've been told they're here. That delegation does not include Vladimir Putin. It does not include Russian government ministers, a rather low-level delegation. And we believe that a Ukrainian delegation is in Ankara. Whether talks begin later on today, we'll just have to wait and see.
We have had President Trump suggesting again today that he could go to Istanbul tomorrow. Is that still a possibility that he and the Russian president could turn up?
Anything is possible. Interestingly, about an hour or so ago, Dmitry Peskov, Vladimir Putin's spokesman, held his daily telephone conference call for journalists. And I asked on that conference call whether it was still possible that Vladimir Putin would come. I said that Donald Trump said that he would still be prepared to come to Istanbul. Would Vladimir Putin come? And although the Kremlin spokesman said that Mr. Putin has no plans to come to Turkey in the next few days, he said we have to wait and see how these talks go. Based on the results of these talks, then any decisions could be taken. So it's not out of the question. But right now you have to say, based on what a whole string of officials are saying, it doesn't look likely that the Kremlin leader will come. But as I say, anything is possible in this situation.
Which means what for President Trump's relationship with President Putin, do you think?
If you look back over the last 100 days or so, it's clear that Donald Trump is determined to improve America's relationship with Russia. Yes, there have been one or two comments critical of Vladimir Putin, but the majority of things that Donald Trump says suggest that he wants to rebuild the US-Russian relationship, and he wants a long-term partnership with Russia. And perhaps even if that means progress can't be made on the Ukraine track, I think Washington's still determined to sort of push on and improve bilateral relations with the United States.
Steve?
So I expect, whatever happens on Ukraine, Donald Trump will sort of pursue this path of trying to improve relations with the Kremlin.
Steve Rosenberg, thank you. Now, there's a huge difference, of course, between what Ukraine and Russia will consider an acceptable way to end the war. This morning, a Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, said Russia's position on a peace deal had changed because it was advancing on the front line. Yogita Limai reports from those front lines of eastern Ukraine near the city of Pokrovsk.
We're on our way to a Ukrainian frontline artillery position near the city of Pokrovsk. This has been one of the most fiercely fought over areas over the last several months. We've just driven up to the frontline artillery unit. It was hidden under a thicket. And as we've driven in here, actually the soldiers are already scrambling and running to the gun. It's a French howitzer that's hidden under some bushes. I can only really see its long barrel sticking out. They have been given targets, and so it is pointed upwards, about to make a shot. And that was the deafening sound of the shots that's just gone off, and you can see a wisp of smoke. We've been on this front line just a few days ago, and it definitely feels much more active and intense today in terms of the number of strikes we're seeing go out from this side and hearing coming in from the other end. Professor is the call sign of one of the soldiers who loads the Caesar. These guns deploy fast and shoot well. We're very happy with them, he says. He also tells us he doesn't believe Russia is serious about talks or a ceasefire. This week, there's been a glimmer of hope that it might be the beginning of the end of the war. But on the front line, it's quite clear how much it will take for the fighting to stop. Because of the threat of incoming fire, we have to retreat quickly. We drive back from the artillery position. We've just arrived at essentially what is a command centre. I'm walking in to it right now. Hello. Hello. Thank you. Well, it's just a regular house. And this is the heart, really, of the operation for this particular unit. Kozak is the chief of this unit.
Russia was the first one to push for these talks. They have refused direct contact since 2022, but now we've had some success destroying their rear positions and supply lines. Russia doesn't have the same strength it had before, and so I think something could come from these talks.
In front of me I can see quite a lot of screens, two large ones, where through Ukrainian drones, we are seeing the front line to the south of the city of Pokrovsk. You can see homes completely devastated and damaged. The soldiers here are looking at Russian positions, looking at Russian soldiers. In fact, we were able to see one on the screen early on moving from one place to another.
So, my name is Yaroslav and I am 37.
I asked Yuri, another soldier, what he thought of the talks.
They should start talking to all the people and soldiers. They wish the war is ended, but, we cannot stop it because we didn't start it, It's a hard decision for sure, but we don't believe that if we give some territory, they will stop. We need to act with weapons, not the words, because I don't think diplomacy will solve this problem.
I'm in the Zaporizhia region in Ukraine's southeast. A part of this region is occupied by Russia, but the city of Zaporizhia, which I'm in right now, is still under Ukrainian control. The front line less than 40 miles from here. In December last year, Maxim Brugin, 30 years old, was in a car, stopped at this traffic light, when a guided bomb from Russia exploded right next to him. He, his friend, and 8 other people were killed in that attack. Their bodies were blown up into pieces, so it was only after forensic tests they were identified. We're about to meet his parents, Serhiy and Natalia. He was their only son.
If we agree to give up land now, Russia will not stop. We are more scared of living under Russian occupation than living under the fear of bombardment, because we have seen what they do in occupied territories. They torture people, and people have absolutely no rights.
People are living in grief in this city. They're living with fear. They're living with the war in their backyard. The diplomatic push that we've seen this week, it has brought a glimmer of hope, but no one expects a quick or easy end to this war. And so despite everything around them, people here are doing the best they can to live as fully as possible through it all.
Yogita Lemay reporting. Kurt Volker was President Trump's envoy to Ukraine during his first term. I asked for his assessment of the current state of the talks.
The Russians, if they're sending a low-level delegation, that's simply not serious. Nobody in that group has any authority whatsoever. It's just a matter of projecting Putin's maximalist demands. The only decision maker in Russia is Putin, so he's the one that has to actually be there. Zelensky has done, I think, a very good job of trying to box in Putin, saying, look, I want a ceasefire. I'm ready to agree to one right now. I'm ready to agree to a permanent ceasefire. I'm ready to talk. I'm here in Istanbul. Let's get on with it. And Putin is refusing. And I think that this has to turn into greater pressure on Vladimir Putin. Up until now, President Trump has not been willing to really apply pressure to Vladimir Putin.
And we have had President Trump saying, I could get to Turkey tomorrow. Do you think this is also a sort of applying more pressure to President Putin that if he doesn't comply with, means President Trump's attitude to him will change?
It is clear that he seems a bit frustrated that Putin doesn't seem to be willing to engage. And so that is at least one thing that I think he wants to push. But whether that will in turn result in some kind of pressure on Putin, secondary sanctions, or a commitment to clear military assistance to Ukraine, that's really not clear.
President Trump has always warned that he would walk away. Is it conceivable he could walk away from being involved in the war in Ukraine, but still make lots of concessions to President Putin and Russia?
Well, there are two different things. Walking away from an effort to negotiate, that's okay. I don't think Putin is serious about negotiating right now. That means we have to keep the sanctions in place, probably increase sanctions, keep up military support to Ukraine. All of those things have to remain in place. If it's walking away in the sense of, okay, now we're giving up on everything, no more sanctions, no more military role, then that would be really rewarding Putin for this kind of misbehavior.
And do you think that is likely?
I don't think it's likely at all. I don't think there's support for that in the U.S. I think it would make Trump look very weak and feel that he has been defeated.
So you don't think he'll walk away, but do you think he will continue to encourage this rapprochement with Russia and opening up between the US and Russia?
Yes, I do. I think he really wants to do that. The more you hear him talk about it, it seems like Trump just sees no reason why this war should be going on. People are killing each other, and he doesn't see any point to it. So he just thinks they ought to stop and get on with business, start making money again. And that's what he would like to do. So I do think that rapprochement with Russia, doing business deals, very much forefront of Trump's mind. But Russia's continued aggression against Ukraine prevents that.
It does prevent it, does it? Because there is a possibility that he doesn't understand. He wants the war to stop, but if Russia is not going to stop the war, he'll just accept that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so, because you still have the sanctions in place. You still have the need to stop the killing. And you still have a lot of public sentiment that you need to end this war. I don't see Trump being able to do that without a ceasefire.
Should President Trump be applying more pressure on President Putin? Or, I mean, at the moment we're seeing every day small advances on the front line, taking more Ukrainian territory. Do you think President Trump could actually say to him, stop?
Yes, Trump has talked about it a few times. He hasn't done it. And Congress could very well step in now and provide some authorizations. Say, look, we're behind you. We want to strengthen your hand. We'll offer Lend-Lease legislation for Ukraine. They can borrow money and buy weapons. We'll authorize secondary sanctions so you can pull the trigger anytime you want.
Kurt Volker. Now, we have had a US trade deal and an Indian trade deal. By Monday, could we also have a new EU trade deal? There are hopes that next week's EU-UK summit could reset the Brexit relationship and undo some of the economic damage caused by our divorce from our biggest trading partner. It's just over 4 years now since the UK left the single market and customs union. Are the recent trade deals a sign that Brexit could now be paying off? Well, we thought we'd try to figure that out with Evan, something we now regularly do on a Thursday, take an issue. So here's the recording of our conversation this week.
I'm not going to give you any opinion of my own, Sarah. I'm going to quote reputable sources who've thought and looked at this.
Of course
and that's all I'm going to do. But we've got a lot of data, obviously, from
OK, but we do need to start. There's one particular number we need to start with, which is 4%, or at least 4% of GDP, because that was the forecast hit to the UK economy.
So this is the Office for Budget Responsibilities, which is the official government bookkeeper, if you like.
And
they say long-run productivity, that is, over the long run, we will be 4% less productive as an economy as a result of the post-Brexit trading relationship. And they said that based on work that was done before Brexit, and they stand by that. So that is, if you like, the official figure of what it cost us to leave the EU. And by the way, their view is that of that 4% hit, 1.6%, so 1.6 of 4, had occurred by the time we signed the trade and cooperation agreement with the EU. So we'd already, by the time we kind of finalised our arrangements, quite a big hit had been made because, you know, there'd been a less investment in those preceding few years as companies didn't know what was going to happen and they were holding back. So we've had a sacrifice, but over the long term, 4% is the figure that the government...
And they're still holding to because we're on track for that.
They haven't changed their mind and they seem on track for that. And there has been some really interesting stuff happening in our economy. If you look at our trade in goods, that's physical things, that has fallen behind the rest of the G7. So we have had a rather bad performance in goods. In fact, at the end of 23, this is a little out of date, but at the end of 2023, our goods trade was about 10% below where it had been pre-pandemic. So there was a kind of quite big hit there. Rest of the G7, the other big economies, their goods trade had grown over that period, as had shrunk. So that, if you like, is assumed to be a Brexit effect. Our trade in goods, things that were flowing across the border, there were now frictions and inhibitions, and that was the hit. But, Sarah, the really big story, underreported, is the growth in our exports of services. Now, in fact, it's not, in this particular case, financial services. The city has been a a bit hit by Brexit. But our growth in service exports, this is consulting, it might be architecture, it might be IT services, there are lots and lots of commercial services. Our growth has been the strongest of the G7 since Brexit. Service exports have overtaken goods exports. And that has been the bit that has really held us up since, held up as a, can be held
And is
high.
this to the EU as well as the rest of the world?
Well, I mean, interestingly, a lot of that is to the EU. The EU remains our biggest trading partner, remains about half our total trade. There hasn't been this massive switch from a European-focused economy to a global economy. That hasn't happened.
Evan, that improvement in services, is it because of Brexit?
It might be related. I mean, obviously, we had a pretty big devaluation in the pound post-Brexit, which made industries more competitive internationally. Basically, it cut our prices internationally. In that sense, it made us a little bit poorer. But that boost from the exchange rate might have made our international services more competitive, yes.
So can we come to what the hopes are or expectations for the EU summit? Because when they're actually quite limited, or at least on the face of it, they look very limited. And, the world has changed and there is more of a focus. The number one priority is on defence and coming up with a security pact. Can't rely on America anymore. But beyond that, in terms of this reset, and perhaps, some people would say salvaging something from the Brexit relationship. Some would say, well, no, this is marvellous. What are we likely to get?
Right. Well, we're likely to get something on youth mobility. Don't know quite how it might occur, but let's call it a sort of light version of free movement for some limited period for some number of under 30s. So that's one, and it's quite hard to put a figure on how significant that would be. The big one that the British government has said is its, if you like, big reset priority on the economic front is a veterinary agreement, which would take away border controls on animals and plants. So basically, we will accept their rules on all of that, go back into the EU for all intents and purposes on animals and plants. And that's a very big boost to agricultural trade. And actually, some work has been done on that. Now, most of our agricultural produce is not traded, so it's not relevant to a lot of what our farms do. But there has been a pretty big hit to UK agri-food exports to the EU post-Brexit. And you would probably, the work I've seen, you're going to get about 25% growth in our exports to the EU, our food exports to the EU. Probably some benefit in prices because barriers are being reduced, the cost of trade is being reduced.
So this, Best for Britain did some research, Frontier Economics. I don't know if it's the same research.
No.
They said that if you had this regulatory alignment, you can get growth of 1.7 to 2%, which means you're, as I understand it, tell me if I'm wrong, you're undoing half the economic damage of Brexit, just by having regulatory alignment.
Growth of 1.7% is different to a level effect of 1.
I had a funny feeling you might be going.
No, so if you could get growth of 1.7% year after year, that obviously is massively useful. People often confuse these things, and they are very, very different.
But we end up in a situation where just by realigning on the various regulations, you can save a lot of money.
Well, look, you might, because companies might feel if the UK is part of a European single market in some industries, they would be happier to invest and put their plants here. So you get a growth dividend, from that. One of the interesting things, Sarah, is that when you look at these trade deals, the numbers do come out as very small in general about what benefit you get from them. And short of re-entering the whole single market and customs union and removing all frictions on trade, I think the effects would probably be quite small. The India one, the official figure on the India one, the India trade deal is by 2040 we'll have a 0.1% national income boost. That's a good day in the office, isn't it? 0.1%, but it's not life-changing. The CPTPP, that's the Comprehensive Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, which we joined. The official estimate is that's going to give us 2 billion of extra income in 2040.
0.08% increase.
And these are all very, very small.
for a lot of people, the idea of being able to do this, which we wouldn't have been able to do before, has a value in and of itself.
I think that is a value that individuals will put on, for themselves. If you said to Canada, you could be 5% richer by joining the United States, would the Canadians say, yeah, we'll take that and let's join the United States? I think a lot of them would say, shove your 5%. I'd rather be Canada. It's worth saying there are some specific Brexit dividends apart from the trade deals. The government highlights data protection. They think they've a few billion of extra benefit coming from different data protection rules. And then you could look at the EU's AI regulation. Many people have said, thank goodness we're not in that. They're overdoing it. We're going to be a better jurisdiction for investments in AI. So, there are dividends and there are freedoms that come with Brexit. There are undoubtedly costs in terms of frictions, and the big surprise is that the British economy has not materially has not suffered relative to our European neighbours. We've grown at about the same rate as France, Germany. We're not completely out of line with the Europeans, and our services have done very well.
So if we're not answering the question particularly, is Brexit paying off? But what we can say is that 4 years after we left the Single Market and Customs Union, there is no sign economically or politically of in any way rejoining.
It's just worth saying on that, it would be very difficult for this economy to rejoin Single Market or Customs Union without rejoining the EU, because if you rejoin it, you are then entirely subject to European policymakers telling you what your policy is, your international trade policy or your regulation of all your products and services, without any say in it.
Well, if you're interested in hearing any of those economic conversations, search Evan and Sarah Figuring It Out. You can find them on YouTube, Sounds, X, @Sarah_Montague or @EvanHD. That's the world at 1:45.
This is Radio 4, where we now continue our series on parenting a disabled child. Katie Watson presents Welcome to Holland.
I can't really explain why it took off in the way that it did, but I'm really grateful that it has.
Unless an unexpected diagnosis has come your way, you probably won't have heard of Welcome to Holland, but it's a bit of a thing if it has.
It's become sort of the go-to essay for parents in our situation.
The essay is shared between parents of children given a shock diagnosis.
It's relevant, but I think not for everybody.
I see the issues with it now, a few years in, but at the time, I really loved it.
For almost 40 years, it's been passed from person to person.
When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation trip to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks and you make your wonderful plans. The Colosseum, the Michelangelo David, the gondolas in Venice. You may learn some handy phrases in Italian. It's all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bag and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands and the flight attendant comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland."
Within days of my son Otis being born and being given an unexpected diagnosis of Down syndrome, several well-meaning people sent it to me.
Holland, you say? What do you mean Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in the flight plan. They've landed in Holland, and that's where you must stay.
But I didn't want to go to Holland. I had every intention of sticking to the original flight plan. Across this 5-part series, I'm looking into what happens when parenting journeys are flipped upside down by an unexpected diagnosis. Episode 4, Tulips.
I've learnt a coping strategy for me is to not ever think about the future.
We sort of found it a bit scary to look into the future. We kind of weren't ready for that.
In this episode, I speak to one mother who's the parent of a disabled adult. It's a place a lot of people, like me, who parent a young disabled child, would prefer not to think about.
I very much stay in the day.
Perhaps because the roadmap is less clear once you get past childhood, or perhaps because society is less accommodating.
If we are going through a period of calm, Jack feeling no physical or emotional pain, then yes, I'm smelling the tulips, choked up by their beauty and thrilled to be in Holland instead of Italy. If I'm feeling scared and lost, however, this essay mocks me with its seeming flippancy. Jack battling random scary health issues that he can't verbalize does not equate to our family just moving to a different, yet equally attractive European locale. It dances on my nerves in those moments precisely because it minimizes my grief.
Kristen Grosclose lives in Ohio, in the United States.
My oldest child, Jack, is profoundly developmentally disabled.
Jack is 22 and lives at home with his parents.
Smith-Kingsmore syndrome only has 300 patients globally because the condition was only diagnosed in 2013 for the first time. So I always joke that I'm jealous of the people who have children with Down syndrome because there's a lot more known about that condition. But I want to welcome you, Katie, to the club. You know the secret handshake, the club that nobody set out to be a part of, yet here we are.
And who many people say they're very grateful to be a member of once they're here. That's something that I want to explore.
Oh, yeah, well, it depends, yes.
It wasn't until Jack's one-year checkup that a paediatrician confirmed Kristen's worries that he wasn't meeting milestones expected of his age.
To this day, I feel like a piece of me is still sitting back in that pediatrician's office. I mean, obviously, we've gone on, we've had much joy and happiness over the years, but I just remember also when we got that news, looking at Jack, and it almost seemed like Jack was a stranger. And the doctor was pretty old school and said, you love him and you take care of him for as long as you can. And when you can't, then you put him in a group home. I remember sitting there and him telling me this, and I felt like my husband, Mike, was choked up and he was worried about Jack's future. And I was to a degree, but I felt like in some ways I was crying for myself and how my life was going to change. I felt like now that's my identity. Do you know that friend who has the child with the disability? Like, that's my new title.
You talked about kind of not knowing him. I mean, I certainly felt, and it's something that I didn't really know how to articulate until actually I did therapy, which was grief. That you need to grieve the baby that you thought you were having, and as well as learning to love the baby that you do have. And I found that very interesting. I'm wondering how you dealt with that grief or understood whether that was grief.
I, too, sought out therapy, and I thought that was really helpful. Because if you can say the difficulty of emotion and express it and articulate it, and then to have the validation that what you're feeling doesn't make you a bad parent or a bad person, but you're just being human, I think that takes a lot of pressure off. You know, I've had 22 years to wrap my mind around the situation, so the grief changes over time. It's not grieving about why isn't he like other people, but more I'm concerned with making sure that the supports are there for him to live the life that he wants to live. Maybe because of his needs being so significant, I never look at typically developing children and think, oh, my child should be like that. But every once in a blue moon, you can get a tiny little pang, like when I discovered one of my friends who has a child the same age as Jack. She mentioned that her child was graduating from college this year. And I thought, wow, that's right. If things were different, he might have gone to school and graduated. But that's not our life. So the grief does evolve. My son, to this day, needs assistance with every aspect of daily life. I bathe him, I toilet him, I feed him. He can't pull the blankets up to warm himself when he goes to bed. He's nonverbal. I have to worry about him bolting. I have to hold his hand when we go out because he could dart into the street.
One thing I remember is very early on, I'd sit in the playground with my other kids and just cry, thinking, everyone's going to pity me, people will see he's different. And now it bores my blood thinking people would pity me.
Yeah, well, when Otis becomes an adult and you're out with him, you get the pity head tilt, kind of the look of concern, pity. And people, to be fair, who are not in our position, they want to be helpful. They look at you, and sometimes you're like their inspiration, whether you want to be or not. Like, I couldn't do what you do. And they mean it in the best possible way. But sometimes I feel like they say that more for them than for me. Like that they're trying to ward off the evil eye. Like, please, God, don't give me that situation.
Welcome to Holland was written in response to a diagnosis of Down syndrome. I wondered how Kristen reacted to being sent Emily Pearl Kingsley's essay.
It was probably somebody like a social worker or somebody who gave it to me, the essay, when Jack was really young. And it's one of those things that I feel like the older Jack gets, the more it kind of bothered me, where I was almost having an argument in my head about it. I found myself arguing, well, that's all well and good about another country. You're not going to Italy, you're going to Holland. But what about those people who have children who attack them, or children who are in and out of the hospital and they're suffering? Those sorts of issues I don't think the essay addresses. And to be fair, that was not her purpose, to be the voice of disability, but somehow it's become molded down because I think our society wants to see that, because it's an optimistic piece. If he's screaming for days on end, and I look at that essay, I loathe the essay with Splendor of a Thousand Suns.
So talking about not going to Italy, but clearly you didn't go to Holland either.
I'm not quite sure where I am. Like, welcome to Antarctica, maybe?
And how does that make you feel?
Sad, in a way, because I feel like there's very limited experiences that are in the media that captures what I go through and what families like mine go through. It is interesting because they're still using an essay that was written in the 80s, and like we haven't introduced other thoughts. Everybody still hands you that essay, and I'm just really blown away that you too got that essay.
Is there a way of kind of talking about disability and parenting in a universal way? Because it's not a one-size-fits-all.
No one essay, whether it be something I wrote or anybody else, could totally encapsulate it, because it's so much going on. But on the same level, I think there are some really human universal things, regardless of the disability, no matter the severity of the condition. Having a doctor or a specialist tell you your child's not going to develop typically, I think there's always that kind of working through that, however that looks like, grieving situation.
Welcome to Holland didn't speak to you, but tell me about what did.
I found a quote that honors both the loss and the beauty of this special needs mystery and provides me with a measure of comfort. My barn having burned down, I can see the moon.
My barn having burnt down, I can see the moon. A Japanese haiku written in the 17th century.
I see it as destruction and hope in 10 short words. While the barn may symbolize the loss of our dreams and expectations, viewing the moon also shows how our new reality does hold beauty and awe, despite everything.
And tell me about that beauty and awe.
When we first got the diagnosis that he was developmentally disabled when he was a year old, a lot of the stuff was focused on what he can't do and what he needed help with and what's the future going to be like. But when I looked to the future back then, I didn't realize that one of my son's superpowers is he is the most loving person. I mean, to this day, after I feed him a meal, he will sit on my lap and give me a hug and give me kisses. And I can still have a very deep connection with him, despite everything. And that's, to me, that love is what the beauty is.
Kristen is clear-eyed about Jack's future.
Our goal is for him to be in his mid-20s and in a group home, and we've made him a part of the conversation. My other child is growing up and going to be living independently, and Jack deserves that as well. So we're working towards that, because I never want it to be that I think I am the only person who's going to take care of him the way I think it should be, and then I die, then he has to go to a whole new living situation.
Hard as it is to hear, I'm grateful for Kristen's honesty.
Every single parent who's in our boat worries about what's going to happen when they die.
In our final episode, we go back to Emily Pearl Kingsley, the author of Welcome to Holland. Jason, the baby she was told she should give away at birth, is now 50 years old.
He gets in the car and turns on the radio and he says, "Mom, I think that's the Baroque period and I think it's Vivaldi." And he was right. You know, that's a tulip moment for me, a big one.
We'll hear the final episodes tomorrow at the same time, 1:45. The series producer is Sarah Shebier.
I'm Kiri Pritchard-McLean. My new comedy on BBC Radio 4 is about becoming a foster carer. They checked our bank statements. They wrote profiles on our pets. I was like, he's a good boy, back off. And to celebrate fostering, it is recorded in front of a local audience of foster carers, care experienced people, and my social worker. There's not one part of our life that wasn't absolutely rifled through and then something written down on a form about it. It was incredibly intrusive, and it absolutely should be. Tough Crowd with me, Kiri Pritchard-McLean. The fact that I'm a stand-up comedian, there's a bit of fame that comes with that. And he went, I wouldn't worry about the fame side of things. I was like, on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds. This evening at 6:30.
BBC News at 2 o'clock. Sir Keir Starmer says his government is making the right decisions on the economy after growth outpaced predictions for the first 3 months of the year. The increase of 0.7% was mainly driven by the services sector. The Conservatives say Labour inherited a growing economy, but the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, says the boost is down to government policy.
I think that reflects some of the choices we've made as a government. Bring stability back to the economy, which has enabled the Bank of England to cut interest rates 4 times now, increase the minimum wage, putting more money in the pockets of working people, and securing 2 significant trade deals just last week.
Ukraine's President Zelensky says a Russian delegation being sent to peace talks in Turkey is made up of stand-in props. President Putin says he won't go to the discussions in Istanbul. Moscow says it is ready for serious work. Officials from the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza say more than 100 Palestinians have died in overnight Israeli airstrikes on the territory. In the occupied West Bank, the Israeli army has killed at least 5 Palestinians during a raid on the town of Tammuz. The Israeli military says there was an exchange of gunfire and called the men terrorists. President Trump has told troops at the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East that his priority is to end conflicts, not start them. The visit to Qatar is part of his 4-day Gulf tour. The Prime Minister says the UK is holding talks with other countries about setting up return hubs to house failed asylum seekers while they wait to be deported. Sir Keir Starmer is on a visit to Albania. At a news conference, Albania's leader rejected the possibility of such a centre being set up there. Scottish Water is calling on people to take care when using supplies across the summer after Scotland saw the driest start to the year since 1964. The company says each person uses an average of 178 litres of water per day, about 40 litres more than in England and Wales. BBC News.
This is Radio 4, where our time-travelling drama continues in 15 minutes. It's the story of Alice and her increasingly desperate search for her missing brother. This week, she's slipped through time into 1945. Can she convince those around her that she's genuine? London Particular is at 2:15. First, it's the Archers, and Brian is feeling nostalgic.
Tony. Oh. Pat said you were in the polytunnels. I trekked all the way up there for Tom to tell me you're doing veg boxes.
Oh, sorry. Last minute change of plan. I've just got the radish and kale to pack and then they're done, ready for the morning delivery. Hey, here. Have a radish. They're delicious.
Oh, thank you. Oh, right. Jenny used to make a boiled egg and radish salad. Nothing better on a summer's evening by the pool.
Yeah. Tom's still miffed that the Borchester Fourths didn't use our radish in the cricket tea.
Well, I hear the Ambridge winning streak might be coming to an end. Seems like they've lost half the team.
Yeah, serves them right.
Well, still bitter about being dropped, Mr. Archer?
Somewhat. I thought I might at least get something for my years of service to the team, but not even a thank you card.
Oh, here, have a pile of flyers instead.
Oh, what are these? Oh, the school handouts for Open Farm Sunday.
Yeah, Stella was sent double. I thought Henry could take some to Borchester Green.
Oh, good idea. He's planning to do something with the goats. Maybe he could give a talk about it in assembly. Yeah. Oh, pass me that box of kale, would you, Brian?
Yeah.
Thanks.
I remember helping Will deliver the veg boxes soon after Jenny died. He was very kind to me.
He's not a man of many words, but I imagine he was good to talk to at the time. I still find it hard to believe that Nick died like that. Such a shock. It must have hit him hard, so out of the blue.
I know. I mean, your mum's death hit me harder than I thought it would. People trot out those platitudes about a good innings and a long life, but it doesn't change the fact that when someone dies, the world shifts a bit for everyone else, however good an innings they've had.
Yep.
Right. Anyway, I better get off. Stella wants me to meet her with the agronomist before he leaves. He's here to check over the barley and wheat.
OK, and thanks for the flyers.
No problem. Oh, I meant to say, I'll be in the Bull late if you fancy a pint or two.
Oh, I'd love to, but I suggested going on a night out with the family for my sins. A moment of madness.
Oh, yeah? Where are you going?
Henry's decided on the escape rooms.
Well, rather you than me.
I'll be thinking of you with your pint of Shires while I'm pretending to have fun. I don't even know what an escape room is.
Well, I think you race around trying to solve a load of riddles.
Well, if I manage to escape, I might make it to the Bull in time for last orders.
I wonder if we'll be in the maze of the space station. Or maybe Grandad built the castle. It's brand new. Kira went with some of the Year 8 football team and they ran out of time. She said it's much harder than the maze.
Well, I think we'll be fine. Ooh, I love a good riddle.
Is Jack upset he's not allowed to come?
Yeah, he was, until I promised him he could play his football game till bedtime.
I'll never bribe Nova and Siren with screens.
We'll see.
Well, I was joking. We've already failed on that one. Last month, we tried to go out for a pub lunch, and they were impossible. Wriggly and whiny, and we both downloaded silly games onto our phones, and bam! Calm time for us. And the world gets 2 new addicts. Tom! Bet he's got caught up by the girls.
He has. He's in their room with Granny.
Yeah, she's reading them The Very Hungry Caterpillar in Welsh.
A Lindisyn llwglyd iawn. She's getting pretty good at it.
Yeah, Tom and Jack are with them. Tends to be food for the caterpillar.
Let me guess. Nova is the caterpillar.
And Grandad?
He's gone outside. He said he wants some fresh air.
Very sensible. Getting some peace while he can.
OK, sorry about that. All ready to go?
We're not going to be late, are we?
Not if we get a move on. I'll go and get Tony from the garden.
Is Dad grumpy about going?
He suggested it.
He suggested a night out, not necessarily one of manic, organised fun.
He seemed very impressed by Lillian's ability to say no.
Yep, impressive boundaries, that auntie of ours.
Natasha has great boundaries. If she doesn't want to do something or doesn't like it, she just says so.
Right. I've got him.
OK, let's get this over with.
Grandad, we don't have to go if you're dreading it.
I'm only joking. I can't wait.
Right. I think there should be something in the dungeon wall.
Secret panel?
Here!
What? Oh, brilliant! Is there something inside?
Yes, a box!
Open it!
Right, there's a clue. OK, from what you save, you must keep the ribbons of hope before you leave.
Keep! We need to get some from the castle keep.
Yes!
Why?
To complete the dungeon mosaic.
And then free the 4th key from the dragon's egg. Come on. Mum, Grandad, are you coming?
No, you three go. We'll keep working on the mosaic.
We might be looking for ribbons.
Oh, something to do with hope?
I think we've got this piece in the wrong place, Dad.
Is it a map?
Or a dragon?
How many more keys do you think we have to find before they liberate the blasted princess?
You okay, Dad? I know this isn't exactly your thing, or mine, but Henry's having a great time. Almost as much fun as Tom and Natasha.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just I feel... it doesn't matter.
Is it Gran?
Yeah.
Oh, it's hard, Dad. It will be for a while.
It was something Lillian said to me yesterday.
When you were going through the boxes? Well, that must have brought up all kinds of memories.
She said she'd gone for a walk with Henry and they had a good cry together.
Oh, well, that's nice. Well, I'm glad Henry's not bottling things up.
I don't know. I suppose it floored me.
Henry's all right, Dad. If that's what you're worried about. I mean, he carries on as normal and then he'll need a hug or a cry. Oh, yesterday I came in to find him and Jack rolling around laughing about something funny Gran had once said. But I think that's all fine. Laughing and crying, it's healthy.
Yes, of course. It's just I don't feel... I don't feel that much.
Oh, Dad.
We got them! Ribbons of hope!
Ooh!
And on the back, the last piece of the mosaic.
Oh, well done!
A dragon's head! Here, Tony, fit it in place.
The bars have opened! Now we can get the fourth key!
Only one more key to find.
Come on, hurry! We're running out of time! What happened to Grandad? Did he go straight home?
Your granny said he had to meet a man about a dog. In other words, meet Brian at the ball.
Oh.
I thought Pat looked tired. Oh, yeah, she claimed Jack and the girls were angels, but I suspect they were far from it.
All right, intrepid knights of yore, I've lit the fire pit so we can make the most of this beautiful evening. The stars are so bright.
Oh, Helen, while we're out there, I can talk you through some of the exciting ideas we've had for transforming the garden this morning. I am impressed that you have the energy to do anything.
We don't. We aren't planning on starting until we can afford to have landscapers doing it for us.
Well, I've managed to stick a few bedding plants into the borders, but that's my limit.
Sarah and Nova are going to love the playhouse Lee built.
Yeah, it needs a good spring clean first. We could all roll up our sleeves and get stuck in this weekend.
Not me. I'm watching the FA Cup final with Jack.
Well, that's only Saturday. The playhouse could be a family project for Sunday.
Yep. Well, let's see. I have been researching something a bit less imposing. An exciting little hideaway that still leaves room in the garden for flowers and some small fruit trees.
Oh, right.
Well, come on, Henry. I'll carry the drinks. You bring the marshmallows for toasting.
I'd miss the dark skies so much if I lived back in the city.
Oh, that's the plan. And there's Mars.
Right, Henry. It's already past 10 and you've got school tomorrow. Let me just check my email and see if they've sent any more info about your school trip.
Okay.
I can't stop thinking about the mistake I made on the last clue.
You almost got us locked in the tower.
I didn't realise dragon's breath was also a plant.
Yeah, it seemed a bit obscure, if you ask me.
But that's what I was trying to say. You didn't need to know it was a plant. You just had to use the map.
Well, anyway, we did it. And just in time.
Kira will be impressed.
Oh. Is everything okay, Helen? Yeah. Well, no, not really. I've had an email from Gran's accountant, the executor of the will.
Oh, what does it say? Oh, I wonder if I've had one.
It says I've been left £278.94, and the same for each of the boys.
That means I can get the halters for the goats.
Well, yeah, that's brilliant, Henry. Come on, though. You better hit the hay.
But... Oh. I'm sorry. I just got excited. It's so nice of great grandma to give us money.
Yeah, Peggy would have been happy that you're so grateful. Yeah, it's very generous of her.
All right. Good night.
Good night, love. Sleep well.
Night, Henry.
Night, darling.
Oh, I've got an email too.
What does it say?
The same. £278 and whatever for me, the same each for Nova and Siren. And a donation to the Remembrance Garden in memory of Wren.
Well, that's a really nice thought.
There you go, Tony. Oh, pint of Shires. Well earned.
Oh, bless you, Brian. I actually had quite a good time in the end, though I never want to go again.
Oh,
cheers.
Cheers. The things we do to make our grandchildren happy.
Yeah.
I was playing with Xander the other day, setting out his little farm in the garden.
Oh, I used to love doing that with John.
Well, I found myself helping the pigs to take over. Complete revolution. I even felt triumphant when they locked the little plastic farmer in the grain silo.
Our very Animal Farm.
Oh, don't tell Neil.
Oh, no. Oh, how did the meeting with the agronomist go?
Oh, all good. Now we're getting the T1 fungicide on the spring barley and no yellow rust in the winter wheat.
Oh, nice to hear some good news for once.
Why? Are things not going well for you? Because Adam seemed pretty happy with your salad crops when I spoke to him in the polytunnel.
Oh, ignore me. Glass half empty. Things are fine.
Where's Pat tonight? Shouldn't fancy coming out?
No, she said she was going straight to bed. Apparently she'd only just managed to get the twins to sleep when the others walked through the door. She's completely exhausted. Oh, it's Helen. She's had an email from Mum's executor.
The accountant?
Yeah. She and Tom have each inherited £270 odd.
Missing a few zeros there.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I mean, Peggy must have left them the best part of 30,000. Very generous.
Unless it's 270,000.
Well, I wouldn't put it past her. She was one of the smartest people I've ever met. Wouldn't surprise me if she had millions stashed away. Oh, I've got a text from Kate. I bet it's about the same thing. Yeah, she's asking if I've checked my emails yet. She's just had one from Grand's accountant and... Oh, she's worried there might have been a mistake.
Linda finds herself disappointed. We'll return to Ambridge at 7 o'clock this evening. Powerful secrets are uncovered in our drama this afternoon in a few moments. Then at 3 we'll head to the Fleet Lagoon in Dorset with Martha Carney.
This is it.
The teams are walking out here at Wembley Stadium.
This is what you fell in love with.
Shot! What a goal!
Crystal Palace.
Unstoppable at the 6-yard box.
Versus Manchester City.
Listen to this noise inside Wembley Stadium.
The FA Cup final.
Up there with the greatest days in the club's history.
Saturday. Watch on iPlayer. Listen on BBC Sounds.
Now on Radio 4 we conclude our drama serial London Particular by Nick Perry. Following the trail of her lost brother, Alice has slipped through time into 1945. Now caught up in tumultuous historical events from London's past, Alice is forced to question her sanity and true identity. Can she convince those around her that she is who she says she is? And will they try to help her find her brother?
Smog. Smog everywhere. Up your nose, in your ear, down your throat, in your hair, between your teeth, condensing on your glasses. A real pea super, so thick you could almost eat it with a spoon. A London particular, as they used to call it, in the olden days, the days of yore, way back when. The smoke from a million chimney stacks tumbling down the roof tiles, curling round the houses and folding itself into the fog. Smog up the river, smog down the river, smog lying draped over London like a lumpy duvet, smog creeping up from the estuary, rolling down the sleeping streets, slipping through cracks in the window frames and under the locked front doors. Smog in the cradle, smog in the bedroom, tickling your lungs and clogging your nostril from Lincoln's Inn Fields to Shepherd's Bush Green, from Chertsey Marshes to Wanstead Flats. What do you reckon? Not bad, eh? Mr. Dufton would have liked that. Mr. Ryan, he used to say to me, you've got a facility for language. Star pupil, see? He had high hopes for me, old Duffy. When I left, he said to me, "Mr. Ryan, your life is a blank sheet of paper waiting to be written on." I knew what he meant. He meant anything was possible. Well, not anymore. Not when you're hearing voices and you're on a blister pack of antipsychotics a day with half an aspirin for good luck. And you've got a little habit and you're hanging around with the wrong sort of people and you're kipping on the wrong sort of people's sofas. Into your lungs an air that kills from yon brick chimney blows. Gases and particulates are going up your nose. London particulates. Nah, that blank sheet of paper's all screwed up and stained. Dad made sure of that, didn't he? What the hell are you doing with your nose in that book? You've had your nose in it all day. What's so interesting about it? Let me have a look at it. Give it here. Bleak House. What the hell's that meant to mean, Bleak House? What do you want to be reading that for? Oh, is it clever, is it? You think you're smart, do you? Is that what you think, you wee clouster? Giving it the big one? And you could hear him working himself up to a clumping again, and Mum would say, "John, leave the boy alone. An education's a lighter load than a bag of tools any day, and it's well you know it." And if he was in a good way, he'd just give her a coating and storm off down the gardeners. And if he was already locked, he'd... Well, you were there, Alice. I don't need to tell you. Yeah, that blank piece of paper's all ripped up and spattered with blood, because I had to get out of that place. And where could I go? Boy is 16. Where could I go? When it got too cold, I'd spend the day on the tube. Just one ticket, then round and round and round we go. Where we get thrown off, nobody knows. So this one time, I was on the Circle line, trying to stay awake, reading this book that someone lent me. But, of course, I fell asleep, as usual. And as usual, I woke up and I was in the olden days. The golden days. The days of way back when. And it was dark. And some bloke was shaking me by the shoulder. And I thought, oh, Christ, not again. So I stumbled off onto the platform and pulled my hood down and staggered up to the steps to the street. And everywhere was just smog. Thick smog. A right pea super. A good old London particular. The people moving about were just shadows, and all the sounds were muffled. I could barely see a yard in front of me, so in the end, I just sat down with my back against a London plane and waited. And in the morning, the sun burnt off the most of it, and at last, I could see where I was. Custom House Reach.
Row, row, row the boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
London Particular by Nick Perry. Part 3.
Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Custom House. Where I took you mudlarking that time, remember? And you were so bored you wouldn't stop complaining. Anyway, I wandered over to the railing and looked down on the foreshore, and there's my little man, Isaac. Right little sod he is. Hard as nails. You see them, these kids, literally in rags and barefoot. Nowhere to call home. No family except each other. And you can't blame them for being sullen, and you think, you know, they're old before their time. But then you see them pick up some broken toy that's been brought in by the tide, and they forget what they're doing for a while and just start to play with it. And you realise they're just kids after all. And there's Isaac. Honestly, the hardest 7-year-old you will ever meet. I've seen him cussing out coppers and boatmen, cudgel in his hand, offering them out. No word of a lie. And there he is, all on his own on the foreshore, playing pretend the way ordinary kids do, rabbiting away to himself. I didn't want to embarrass him, so I left him to it and pushed off. And later on, I saw him in the pub, and we had a very interesting conversation.
So we rewind to VE Day, 8th of May 1945. I see this bloke wearing a Tommy Hilfiger sweatshirt walking across Trafalgar Square. I follow him and I ask him where he got the shirt, and he says the Salvation Army. And I've just asked him to take me there when out of nowhere comes Jill.
Elsie! Elsie!
Oh, sorry, Jill. I'm in a bit of a hurry. I'll see you back at home, okay?
Hang on, wait for me. Where are you going?
There's just something I've got to do. I'll be fine. You stay with the others. I'll catch up with you later.
What have you got to do? Who's he?
Look, I can't explain now.
Who is he?
The thing is, he's helping me with something. I need to go with him.
What's he helping you with?
I haven't got time to explain.
Well, if you want my opinion, it doesn't look all that savoury to me.
What's that you say?
What are you doing with my friend?
Uh-huh. I'm not doing anything with your friend.
Well, please, stay away from her, whoever you are.
Jill!
I'm warning you, I'll call a copper.
Right, that's it. I'm away. Keep your shilling.
No, don't go. Wait for me.
No. Elsie, stay here. You're not going with that man. I won't allow it.
Wait, please.
You don't know him from Adam. He could be anyone.
What the hell are you doing? Get out of my way. I'm going to lose him. Wait. No, don't go. Please.
Maurice.
Please don't go.
Elsie, what's the matter, love?
She was about to go off with a complete stranger. I really didn't like the look of him, some kind of vagrant with... Will you... Elsie, please! Don't make a scene! Full of looking! Help me, Maurice! We better get home.
All right, love, don't you worry. We'll soon have you home. Look, Jack's here too, and Hilda and Gwen, and Mary and Pete and Connie and Miriam. The whole gang's here to look after you.
We couldn't let you go, love. Not after what happened last time. I know you don't remember, and it's probably a good thing, but when they found you in Brockwell Park all bloody and bedraggled, well, take it from us. You didn't want to go through that again.
There were vagrants involved that time too. Vagrants, weren't they?
That's right, Jack. Yeah, nasty, filthy people.
I need to get to the Salvation Army in Greek Street.
Who's having tea?
Oh, yeah, all right.
I said I need to get to the Salvation Army.
Yes, dear, we heard.
I know for a fact that the shirt that man was wearing was made in the 1980s at the earliest.
Elsie, dear, how is it possible for anything made in the 1980s to exist in the year of our Lord, 1945?
Who said they wanted tea?
What was that?
Oh, I love tea. What was what?
That ping. I heard a ping.
Tea for me, please.
Oh, I didn't hear anything.
That's the sound my phone makes when I get a text. It came from over there.
I didn't hear anything either. Did anyone else hear anything?
Yeah.
No, well, you must have imagined it, dear. No one else heard it, whatever it was.
It came from your bag. Jill? Please give me your bag.
Oh, you might as well give it to her, Jill.
Maurice,
Just give it to her.
This is my phone. What are you doing with my phone?
Why didn't you take the battery out? I'm talking to you, Jill.
It's an iPhone. You can't take the battery out.
Well, at least you could have turned the bloody thing off.
I thought I had done.
Those little buttons can be confusing, to be fair.
Yes, they are a bit fiddly.
I'll give you fiddly in a minute. Christ on a bike. So what do we do now?
Excuse me? What's going on?
Mind you, I would have thought the battery would have drained by now. I mean, how long's it been on?
It's an iPhone 11. I read somewhere they've made massive improvements to the battery life.
Why even hang on to it? You should have just chucked it in the river.
I kept it in case.
In case of what?
The unexpected.
Well, that went well, didn't it? Who was the text from?
Virgin. They're going to call me to make sure I'm on the best deal.
May I see? How on earth did a text get through from 2020?
Maybe a temporal leak. Radio waves last forever, don't they?
Hang on. This thing's almost fully charged. That can't be right. Jill, have you been charging it?
Well, so what if I have?
Why the hell would you do that?
I was playing Turtle Blast. It's very addictive.
Turtle Blast?
I miss my games, all right?
Sorry, excuse me. Would someone very much mind telling me what the hell is going on?
Jill's dropped a clanger, that's what's going on.
Oh.
Jill has blown the actual gaff.
Do you seriously mean to tell me that you had me locked up in a psychiatric hospital and put me through electric shock treatment, and it's all just some kind of a game?
Shut up, woman! I'm trying to think.
What are we going to do, Maurice?
Well, we haven't got a choice, have we? Thanks to the brilliance of Miss Mayhew. Jack, are you fit?
Yep.
Come on, you. Let's go.
What's happening?
We're going for a little drive.
Oh, Maurice, do you have to?
Unless you've got a better idea. Huh?
Where are we going?
Epping Forest.
Why?
It's lovely this time of year.
There's primroses.
Left, dear. First left.
Yes, OK.
Please, can I just explain a few things? The reason I'm here is I'm looking for my brother. His name's Alan. He went missing and I've been trying to find him, and that's all. That's all I'm doing. I don't know who you are or what I've stumbled into. I met these people and I thought they might be able to help me find Alan, and I got on a train at Savoy Station, and that's how I ended up here. That's all I know. That's all I know about anything. I'm not interested in anything except finding my brother.
Is everything in the boot?
Yeah.
Have you checked?
It's all there.
I'm scared.
There's no need to be. When you think about it, it's just a moment in time. Split second.
Don't talk to her, Jack. They're trained to make an appeal to your humanity.
Lost cause in my case.
Look, I haven't been trained by anyone. Who do you think I've been trained by? I just think, whoever you think I am, I'm not that person.
It doesn't matter who you are, dear. You saw something today that you shouldn't have seen. Something that puts our plans in jeopardy. It's not a question for debate.
Anyone mind if I put the radio on?
No, go ahead.
Sunbeam shine, a little rain must fall. The weather always can be fine. A little rain must.
Is this far enough from the road?
I'd say so. Come on, you bring the shovel, Jack.
Oh, no.
Don't
Please.
scream. Don't you dare scream. Jack.
Yeah?
Take over for a bit.
Okie doke.
Here, give me the gun. I'll hold your jacket.
Please. I think there's been some...
It's starting to get dark, Mo. This will be deep enough, won't it?
Okay.
Give me a hand getting out, would you? I can't get out on my own.
It's a shame it has to be this way.
Mo? I don't want to get my clothes dirty. Mo, give me a hand, will ya?
Sorry, Jack. Right. Now's not the time for crying. Alice, help me cover him up. There's another shovel in the boot. Quickly. Someone might have heard the shots. Gather your wits. I'll explain when we're back in the car. Right now, if you could just help me bury Jack, OK? Did you hear me, Alice?
Yes. Wait.